Welcome to Far Out with Faust, everyone. I'm Faust Chicho, and today I'm sitting here with a new friend of mine. Her name is Sara Fancy. Sara has studied a multitude of healing modalities, techniques, and philosophies, including energy medicine, polarity healing arts, cranial sacral unwinding, astrology, shamanism, Reiki, and constellations, just to name a few. And she's incredibly taken all the skills that she's acquired and she's brought them into her outdoor lifestyle and love for horses. And this has culminated into this spectacular, very unique equine therapy, of which she continues to practice on her beautiful land in Ranchita, California, and which I had the pleasure and privilege of spending 3 days with her not that long ago and enjoying. Sara, thank you so much for beaming in. It's so great to have you on the show.
Thanks, Faust. That was an incredible introduction.
Thank you. Thank you. I practiced it once or twice. No, but it's easy because I've gotten to know you a little bit and gotten to know your work. So it was my pleasure. Yeah. So Sara, let's get into, like a little bit about where you come from and what you're about. So for our listeners, have a little bit of a background of how you got into this.
Well, originally, I'm from England.
Really?
You knew that.
I did know that.
Yeah, but I came over when I was like 23, and I've been here ever since, actually. So I've kind of had many chapters in my life, and I've sort of reinvented myself many times.
Mm-hmm.
And when I got into the horses and the healing arts was really when I moved to Topanga in LA, in California.
Mm-hmm.
That was 1998. I'd come out of a bodybuilding phase where I was, looking to be a pro bodybuilder, and that kind of imploded.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's a tough racket. I mean, it's a hell of a scene. I heard a lot of things about it.
Very strange. Yeah. But I came out of it in one piece, and actually it was, looking back, I feel like it was going to get me to where I am now, kind of whatever path I took.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, I had a huge sort of reevaluation of what I was doing, where I wanted to be, how I wanted to feel, all of that. And I just needed to get out of Venice. I was in Venice, California. And I had gone to Topanga for a hike, and I fell in love with it. And I just thought, I just want to be able to walk out my door at night and feel free and just like hear birds and not feel like I'm trapped inside my house.
Yeah.
Because all the dangers and stuff,
Yeah, I hear that.
Yeah.
Well, let's see. 1998. I had just graduated high school. At that year, well, 97, I think. But that's you ended up in Topanga. That was your first. So was that when you were exposed? But first of all, I know that you first moved to where I live now, and you thought about pursuing a musical career or a career in music.
Correct.
So and then you moved to Los Angeles or the California area, and so at that point, was that your first exposure to, or you delved into the healing arts before you got into the horses, right? Is that how it went?
Yeah. I mean, backtracking a bit, when I was in London, I was involved in the indie music scene, and we had our own record label, and I toured Europe, and it was really fun, but we weren't making really any money, and it was pretty bad in London in the 80s, like post-punk era. Everybody seemed to be on smack.
Something.
Yeah. And you couldn't trust anyone. Everyone was stealing from everyone. It was really miserable. And I just had to get out, and I got the opportunity to get a one-way ticket to New York as a courier. And that's how I got there,
Nice.
Yeah. But when I was, so then I was in New York and pursuing a solo musical career.
Okay.
And that didn't really happen. That seemed to be difficult. Everybody wanted me to be like Madonna at the time. And I was doing like reggae music, like Lovers Rock. That was kind of my thing that I really
Oh,
liked
cool.
back then. Yeah. And I was writing songs, and anyway, but they all had ideas of how I should be. And I wasn't really a big fan of Madonna at the time. And someone introduced me to the gym, and then that was it.
Yeah.
I was hooked
Yeah.
into the gym, and that led me to California, to Venice, to Gold's Gym.
Mm-hmm.
And then I did a whole episode there with competing. I came second in the California state.
Wow.
I won the Orange County overall.
Wow.
Anyway, but yeah, I came out of that just having put all my energy into working out, into my physical body, like what I look like,
Oh, yeah.
what I was eating. And you can't really have friends that are outside of that because they just don't understand
Right.
the discipline and like the lifestyle. And so it really came to this place where I got out of that whole scene, and then I basically started meeting people. And the way that I got over it was like a real crisis in my life. Like, I realized that what I was doing was not going anywhere, like trying to be a professional bodybuilder, going back to England, competing at Wembley in the British Championships, not placing very well, like it was exhausting, and it just taxed me out financially, everything, and then what did I have to show for that?
Right.
Really nothing. I didn't really like have anything, I didn't even have anywhere to live,
Wow.
So I got very depressed, and a friend of mine suggested I meditate. And I had never heard of like meditating or anything. I kind of heard of it, but I wasn't really interested in it. And I said, so what do I do? And he said, just breathe in and out for 10 breaths and count your breaths, and do it in the morning and do it at night. So by the end of the week, I was up to 100.
You're such a fierce I mean, you just I love the way you dive into everything. It's the intensity with which you apply yourself is incredible. So tell me what happened when you started meditating.
So then 2 weeks after, I noticed a difference. I noticed I didn't feel so heavy. I noticed that I was meeting people that were like helping me in ways. Like, I basically wrote a script with an English guy about my experience in the bodybuilding world. It was called Tough Bitches. And we did it in like 3 months, but it was really therapeutic for me, and he was a funny guy. Like, he wrote comedy, and we just laughed, and it was a really great creative process. And then through him, I met other people that were familiar with the healing arts. And then I was introduced to Seth, Seth Speaks.
Oh, of course. Yes.
Yeah. And then Hands-on Healing, Barbara Ann Brennan book. So I was, there you go.
One of the books I keep handy.
Yeah. So, and I had never heard that about creating our own reality, like from our thoughts. I had never heard that. So I was fascinated, and I was like, I just couldn't get enough. And I used to go to this store called The Psychic Eye and just like buy every book that was about everything that, I needed to learn,
Yeah. Yeah. I know once you get a taste for it, and then you just want to devour everything. And there's a time where you're like a sponge for it. Like, you can't get enough of it. I know. I had a similar experience, but so you started meditating, right? And then you started to experience kind of a shift in your experience, and like synchronicities started happening and things started to change, and then you started to find things, and I'm sure things started to find you, because I noticed that happens a lot once we begin to align with our path. Whatever it is, it's like you kind of know when you're on the right track when things start finding you. And so I imagine that happened to you. I'm just pointing it out for our listeners who are still thinking about meditating, and every day goes by and they just haven't decided they're going to do it yet. It sounds great. There's just so many people I know who I know they know they should be, and they know it sounds great, and they just think that it's this thing that is, something that they don't know how to do. And you just put it as simply as possible. What you started doing, as simple as counting your breaths once, in the morning and at night, and just starting there and seeing what happens, seeing if it has an effect. Anyway, I couldn't pass up the opportunity to encourage people to do that. So go on. We where we left off, you were kind of coming into this to these different healing modalities, and you discovered Seth. God, Seth is mind blowing. Everyone's talking about Jane Roberts. If the Validity of the Soul is the name of the book, if you guys are interested to know what book she was referring to. But go ahead. Where did you leave off?
Yeah. I actually read all of her books.
Yeah.
Like like I said, I couldn't get enough, and it was really stimulating, to me intellectually and and spiritually.
Yeah. It's a
because
different. Go ahead.
Yeah, I had never heard of channeling, I mean, I kind of heard of it, but it just wasn't in my stratosphere. It's like, it was, all about me, like, looking a certain way, whatever. So the sort of manifestation aspect, creating our own reality. I was like, well, if I get a handle on that, that means my life is going to go the way that I want it. Instead of feeling like a victim of life, which is what I felt like that up until then, when I was introduced to that concept,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I always felt like shit happens. And I used to just say like, shit happens. And,
Yeah.
But I don't say that anymore.
No,
I don't believe that.
You're wiser than. Well, I tell my son all the time. I was like, don't say stuff like that. Then you start believing stuff like that, and you're going to start to experience that. And he's like, okay, I know, I remember. I won't say it again. But it's true. And then we develop these beliefs that become programs, and then we experience them in our life. Like I'm like I tell my kids all the time. I'm like, I am one of the luckiest guys you'll ever meet. Not just because I am, but somewhere along the line, I got that into my head and I believe it and I experience it. I win. I just get lucky. And then I look up my name, and the Latin root is like Faust, and it says lucky one. And I'm like, see, I told you.
It's proof.
Yeah, but and then I have these crazy experiences where I win these raffles with these books worth $50,000, and I'm one of like 275 names, and they pull my name out of the hat. It happens over and over. But anyway, So what was it like? So how did we get from there to I know you ended up working on an equine therapy. Was it a ranch or like the first place that you really learned about and experienced horses?
Yeah. So I left Topanga. I left Venice. I moved to Topanga. I got out of going to the gym because I was still addicted to going, even though I wasn't competing and stuff. I mean, it was just like going to church,
Right.
like every day. But someone attacked me in the gym, and
like physically?
Yeah. And that was it for me. That was enough for me to say, I'm done with that.
Wow.
It was really kind of embarrassing. I was also learning how to box, at the time, and I was kickboxing and boxing. So I knew how to fight.
Yeah.
And I
What
had
happened? Did you kick this person's ass? Like, was it a male? Was it a
well,
female?
it was a female, and I knew, I saw her looking at me. I used to smoke a lot of weed, and I would be really high when I was working out.
Yeah.
So I was working out, and I just had this, intuition that she was going to jump me. And I was
Yeah.
like, she's not going to do that, because you get kicked out of golds for that, right?
Yeah.
Like if you fight, you're out of there. Anyway, sure enough, she comes over and starts swinging at me. And I was like, what? And it's just like bouncing off my head. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
So I took her down like into a hold, like
Yeah.
a wrestling hold. And all these guys like just ripped me off, and I don't know, all my earrings got ripped off. Like
Ooh.
my Walkman got stolen, like,
Yeah. Yeah. It was a
and then
mess.
and then I went back and they wouldn't let me in. And I'm like,
Um,
why are you not? And why? And they said, you were fighting. I was like, it wasn't me. I didn't start.
yeah.
And I said, go check it out on the camera, because they have all the camera. And they're all like giggling, watching it, and it was just like really humiliating. And I was like,
Yeah.
you know what? F this. I'm done.
You
I'm
got
too
a
old.
clear sign to
Yeah,
take a
I'm too
break,
old
a
to
long
be,
break from the gym. Wow.
fighting in the gym, like, anyway.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
that got me out. And I actually got into yoga and was doing that in Topanga. And anyway, I moved from my little place to another little place, and there were horses next to me. And the owner of those horses told me that horses teach you about leadership. And I was like, what? And I wasn't really interested in horses then. I didn't have great experiences when I was a kid. And I didn't, but what she said really intrigued me. And I started taking lessons with her, and I learned how to ride. And we used to ride around the Santa Monica Mountains up there. It was like amazing. And I just thought, I really love this. I love being with horses. I love being outside. This is kind of how I want to spend my day,
Yeah.
And at the time I was like painting offices in Hollywood, and I hated it. And a friend of mine was getting me the work, and then I read this thing that said, you close one door and another door opens. And I thought like, okay, no more working in the office. I just can't do it anymore.
Right.
It's toxic. I hate it. I hate the city. And I told my friend, like, just don't offer me any more work. And she said, well, how are you going to pay your rent? How are you going to pay your bills? How are you going to? I said, I don't know, but I just know I can't do that anymore. So
Right.
don't tell me about any more work. I'm not going to do it. And then I wrote down like everything I wanted as far as like how I wanted to spend my day outdoors with horses, walk to work or ride to work, like that was my thing. What else? Like in service, meeting different people, And then
Yeah.
sure enough, like 2 weeks later, an equine therapy ranch opens at the end of my road,
Wow.
in a residential area that, they're not even
Wow.
supposed to do business there. And then I got offered a job, and it was basically like feeding and mucking out, for the horses. And once I was in there, I basically took the place over. Within 3 months, I was running that place.
Yeah.
And I was there for 7 years, and I learned everything I learned helped me in my own business, start my own
Oh my
horse
God. I
healing
bet. My
business.
God.
And yeah, I mean, I saw how everything went wrong, and, like, it was a really great education as far as, like working with horses and people and parents and children and autistic people and people who
Okay.
are really ill, and,
Yeah.
there's so many things that can go wrong.
Well, I mean, you put all those factors into one place, and you really gotta have to control the variables, and if you're just starting out, what a perfect way for you to figure out not only what you wanted to do, but also the kind of the most efficient and safest way to do it. I could just imagine some of the things that when you I don't know the experience of the people who open, but I mean you do see a lot of different things with bringing autistic kids, and what I don't understand I mean, I think I have a little bit of an intuition about it, but like, what's when they're bringing in autistic kids to work with horses, is it just like the connecting them with nature? Like, is that how does it affect them? Like, what's the,
Well, it was also adults too. It wasn't just children.
yeah,
And then the way that we talked about it then was being on the spectrum. So there's different levels of
yeah,
autism, and with there was one boy that used to come with his family, and he really didn't like dirt or like um,
mm,
he was really squirrely and stuff, and just basically getting them interested in touching the horse and brushing the horse,
mm.
getting them past that sort of like finickiness
Oh yeah,
of like,
they're very sensory,
yeah,
sensitive. Yeah,
yeah, not wanting to be dirty, or
yeah,
or wanting to be really clean, like not getting their clothes dirty and stuff,
yeah,
and sensitive to noise as well. Like I would have volunteers, who had really squeaky voices, and I'd be
yeah.
like, they like my voice. My voice is deep,
Hmm.
and it's not piercing on the ears.
Yeah.
Um, but after, like, with just him coming regularly, like every Saturday morning, I think after about 3 months, the family was able to go camping, and it
Oh
was
wow.
something that they had never been able to do. And then they got a dog, because I used to take my dogs with me,
Right.
and that was huge, for them to be able to have a dog. And
So
it just,
they were able to
yeah.
make progress.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That's
And
amazing.
the way that I used to work was basically get the child or adult to be familiar with the horse, to get to know the horse's name, work with the same horse every week, and
Hmm.
form a relationship, and then get them on the horse and just like ride a little bit, nothing big, like not really holding the reins, just being
Hmm.
led, just the feeling of the sensation on the horse. And
Yeah.
everything was done in a way where the horse is content, the horse isn't
Yeah.
injured as far as having a bad back, or like, like basically not treating the horse like a slave,
Right.
like treating the horse as a friend, as a you know um as an individual, in the sense of this horse has a personality or a horsenality,
Right.
whatever you want to call it.
Personality. Yeah.
And I mean, I work with homeschool children, and I used
Hmm.
to do programs. So I designed all the programs, and there was one horse that couldn't be separated from another horse because she was completely bonded to him, and she would go crazy, like scream and everything,
Oh, really?
So
Wow.
yeah, so I was like, well, we'll just bring her boyfriend then, JJ. We'll bring him too, and it's not a big deal, like just bring him along, and then she's happy, he's happy.
Yeah.
And then with the kids, I'm like, let's have a wedding. Let's, like, and so that was like 4 classes, where we basically planned a wedding for
Hmm.
JJ and Athena. And then
That's
we
awesome.
did invitations, and when we had someone who actually did you know, married
Yeah.
them, and it was all the kids, it was
Yeah.
fun.
No,
But
that
just
sounds
like
awesome.
working with what presents itself in a way that's like not forcing the horse into something that the horse doesn't want to do.
Right. I mean, and that, God, I just imagine those parents that got a dog and went camping. I mean, I, I see a lot of autistic children, and I watched a lot of documentaries on autistic children, and um, man, it's some of the people, some of them are, obviously really far off on the spectrum, but either way, it's, that's not an easy go for the parents. So anything that and allows for a little bit of joy and normalcy is such a blessing. So that's it's amazing how society and people are finding ways to help these kids cope with whatever this thing is, wherever it comes from. It's like this hyper sensitive awareness to the world. It's like, the perspective is so different with some of them. So it's fascinating. It's so cool though that you were like witness to that, and then what else you were doing with all the Shakespeare comedies end in a wedding.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah, it's always a great way to wrap up a story. So it's cool that you're teaching kids that. It's a lot of joy, I think. But you mentioned that treating the horse. One of the things that I learned, when in my time with you in Ranchita, was just about how the interactions with horses, and they really they each have their own personality. I mean, you don't have to be around them for any length of time to begin to get a true sense of that. And you were teaching us about that, and teaching us about a lot. So your horses, they're all rescue horses,
Mm-hmm.
and Sara has rehabilitated and helped, I think, every one of your horses in some way overcome the trauma of where they came from. And now these horses help you help people overcome what most of the time is a lot of unintegrated and unhealed trauma. So there's this amazing, beautiful, cyclical thing happening there. And that's incredible. But can you talk a little bit about some of these horses? And I just found it so fascinating when you were teaching me about because people really aren't aware of, the all the different places that horses are still really kind of being used like cattle and or like, bondage in total slavery. So I would love for you to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. Well, when I started working at that equine therapy ranch, we would get horses donated. So it's basically horses that were had an injury, or that they weren't suitable, as far as they weren't an English riding horse, and they only know Western. I mean, we got one horse like that, or it was English and it couldn't do Western or something like that. But basically horses can do anything if you work with them. And, usually the problem is the person. Everybody thinks the problem is the horse, but it's the person who's the problem, who hasn't got the patience or the time. Horses are so willing. I mean, that's their sort of generous spirit that they have, is that they are willing, and but we can get in the way of that, or underestimate them in a lot of ways. I wanted to say about the hypersensitivity of autistic children is that horses are like that. They're hyper aware, they're hypersensitive. And they also are really emotional, and they make bonds, and when people sell horses, or, give up on their horse, and then that horse gets put into a trailer and taken to somewhere completely new, and no one's, it gets to this strange place, and maybe it's isolated. I mean, that's terrible for a horse. That's
Yeah.
could give a horse a nervous breakdown, because horses form relationships with other horses and other animals and people. Maybe it's the guy that was cleaning out the stalls, or the woman that was cleaning out the stalls. They could have had a relationship with them, and then that ends, and then they're not going to see that person anymore, and then they have to start over. And then horses have long lives. They can live till 30. I had a horse that lived till 35.
Mm-hmm.
And but they have, the classic Black Beauty, where the horse goes from one situation to the next, to the next, to the next. I mean, that is a typical horse's life, where they get given or sold, or, and then but I consider them family, right? So they're like family. So when they come, that's it. They're here. They're not going anywhere. And it might take 2 years for the horse to rehabilitate, in the sense that it's okay with someone touching them, or it's okay that someone approaches that horse without the horse leaving, or, not interested.
Right.
Because why would the horse be interested in anyone where the only experiences it's had, or a lot of the experiences it's had, have been traumatic,
Painful and traumatic.
painful, yeah. And so the horse learns, I don't want to be around humans. Then all they do is bring on stress to me, or in some kind of way, And so it's about really like letting the horse decompress, not putting any demands on the horse. Not having an agenda, because they pick up on mental thoughts. They're really like I could be going up to my horse like thinking I got to get this done, before 10 or something like that, and the horse is on the other side like, no, that's too much for me.
Right. They can sense that you're walking out with this. They
It's
can
pressure.
sense the pressure.
Yeah, it's pressure. So really learning like not to put any pressure on the horse, whether it's physical, emotional, mental. Just let them like be with other horses. Let them like have time, to feel secure, to feel like, they're not going to get ripped out and like thrown into another awful situation or something like that. And then get them to trust me,
Yeah.
And that's through consistency. That's through, like I said, not putting too much pressure on them.
Right. You have this incredible setup, and so like the retreat that I attended was called the Shamanic Horse Retreat, and it's a 3-day event, and how I learned about it is kind of another. It's a longer story. I'm going to skip it, but if you want to know how I learned about it, you'll have to go back and listen to previous podcast. It's the We Work podcast. I learned about it from one of my guests' stories that I asked them, and it was from a woman that Sara had mentored, and that's how I found Sara. Anyway, so you tend to get a lot of people, a lot of your clients or customers or whatever you call them, that are at a point in their life where there's sometimes a bit of a crisis going on, and or they're trying to cope with something or work something out in their life, and so they find you, or they're drawn to you, and you end up working with them with the horses. Can you tell everyone listening a little bit about that process, and how horses, and we're going to get into the constellations in a bit, but just right now in general, like how horses are kind of tailor-made for this in a lot of ways?
Well, yeah, like people coming out here also to this kind of environment, which is off-grid, there's no concrete here. There's no houses. The view's really nice. You don't see anything really ugly, There's not a lot of noise. It's pretty tranquil. And it's very noticeable when the sun comes up and when the sun goes down and when the stars come out. All those things are more noticeable than if you're in the city, or outside of the city even, And then you're with these like huge animals. And I forget, most people are not around horses. A lot of people have never touched a horse. I kind of have to remind myself that, that this is a very new experience for someone. And you guys, I remember when you guys came, and both you and Hunter had a little fear, remember, right?
Yeah.
We talked about that. And then that really disappeared very quickly.
It did. Surprisingly, it did. Yeah.
And that's, I think, is to do with, the relaxed way of being with horses. Like they're not tied in the cross ties,
Right.
Then they're not tied to a fence or a hitching post while we're like touching them and stuff like that. They're just in the crowd. We go in the crowd. They come over for what they want. We have a brush. Oh, you want a little brush? And horses love being brushed if you do it in a way that, like it's like kind of like a massage for them, and they're itchy, and then they'll like ask for more. They'll like touch you with their nose and your hand and say, hey, stop talking to him, keep brushing me, or something like that,
Yeah.
And so when you get that sort of, there's a communication happening and they're very communicative, then it's easy,
Yeah.
It's just kind of a natural way of being with animals, big animals. And obviously my horses are not aggressive. You know, most horses are not, they're not gonna
Right.
freak out, you know, or anything like that. Like I wouldn't have horses working with people like that, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, horses can be like that, but that's why, you know, they go through like a rehabilitation
Right.
period, and then they're slowly introduced to people, and then, you know, and then it's really up to the horse if they want to participate.
Yeah.
You know, and even with the dancing, because that's all at liberty, meaning there's no ropes,
Right.
there's no bribery. Oh, there's a little bit of bribery with the carrots.
Well, there can be, yeah. We danced a few times,
But
but we only used
yeah,
carrots one time, but they were
yeah,
dancing with us
yeah,
before we had
without,
carrots too,
yeah,
which was incredible. You know, I was drawn to this retreat when I heard about the amount of vulnerability involved and the amount of like emotional healing, and the fact that the fact that I've never truly interacted with a horse, and I have always loved them, but they were kind of like this big, not scary, but like I just didn't know how to approach a horse. I didn't you know, I didn't know how to interact with a horse. So everything about what I heard, I really attracted me to come out and do this. And I mean, I know that my intuition was right on because of, I mean, 100 reasons why, but you know, who I ended up coming with and the experiences that we had, it was priceless. And I know that both people who I went with feel the same way. But you know, we talked a lot about horses and how big their hearts are, and you were teaching us how, you know, when we're around horses, our hearts kind of end up entrained with theirs, and the way that they are a naturally balance seeking animal, it also influences us when we're in their presence. And I was wondering, you know, you've probably seen that manifest in so many ways. Could you talk about that?
yeah, yeah. So when someone is holding a lot of shame or guilt around, you know, something that happened to them or something they did, the horses don't really resonate with guilt or shame. Like that's not something they experience, as far as what I can tell, you know. And so when those emotions come up, they really get transmuted very fast. And it's the horses, I feel like, help to do that just by their energy. And because it doesn't really stick, like for instance, if someone has an abortion and they're Catholic, and then in the Catholic Church, no, you're not supposed to do that. Or if they get divorced or something, or they're holding some shame like that, like to the horse, that it doesn't compute, you know. And but then the horses really understand, you know, herd, like coming together, community, bonds. They understand rejection. They understand love, primal things, you know.
Yeah,
And
a lot of the primal
yeah, yeah,
emotions. Yeah.
yeah. And so it really helps people to flush out, you know, holding those negative emotions for years and
Yeah.
years and years, that have gotten like way pushed down, but are interfering in their life, like completely unbeknownst to them, you know.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm sure, my God, you've probably seen a lot. I'm just remembering the you know, the work that we did and the constellations that we did. And so, Sara, you learned to do what is generally referred to as a nature constellation. But you know, we call it, and you call it, a horse constellation. But when these constellations take place outside, they tend to call them nature constellations, right? So this was one of the most incredibly profound parts of the retreat. And the horses, so I mean, I'm going to let Sara talk about it, but you know, there's first let's get into what a constellation is, so you guys have a frame of reference. Okay, so you know, we talked about, and this you know, this is mostly, Sarah, you tell me if I'm on with this, you know, when constellation work is about you know, kind of reconciling with our ancestors, and therefore with ourselves, you know, and accepting our heritage, and you know, aligning with all who came before us so that we can move forward in a more resourced way. I think that's the way that you phrased it, and that is such a powerful, palpable experience that I had when I was doing this constellation work with you. I mean, it was incredible. It was like this tractor beam opened up behind me, and I mean, it was visceral. It was really powerful for me, and feeling all that energy. So, you know, tell me about constellation work and how you got into it, and then how you, and then we're going to get into how the horses come into this.
Okay. When I was in Topanga in the early 90s, I had a neighbor, and he had studied with Bert Hellinger, who brought family constellations to the West, basically, in the 90s. And he invited me to one of his like free events, and I went, and I didn't quite get it. And I think I went again, and then didn't quite get it. The third time, it was like, boom, you know, like I got it. And I was blown away, you know, and I just wanted everyone to experience it. So I gathered all my friends. I was like, you got to try this out. And I would host the constellation event. I would bring the guy in, you know, he would facilitate. And then I found another person as a facilitator. I actually went through like 3 facilitators in the period of like 5 years or something like that. And I got a lot of experience. Obviously, you know, like I had so many questions, you know, about the field. Like, how come like we can feel the same feeling as a total stranger that's dead?
Right.
You know, how come I'm standing like that stranger and I know that he died of emphysema, you know, because I can hardly talk, you know, things like that. Like, how does that work? Like, I was so fascinated by it. And so I got to like do a lot of repping, and I witnessed a lot of constellations. And then finally, the last facilitator said, Sarah, why don't you learn it? There's a teacher and she's doing a year training. And I was like, okay. So I took the training, and that was with Francesca Mason Boring. It was in Pasadena, around here in LA. And then when I graduated, my friend said, like, why don't you do it with horses? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, what do you think? And she said, let's try it. And we tried it, and they were just like showing up. Like they've been doing it the whole time, you know, like they've been doing it their entire life or something. And she said, I really think they want to do it. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, that solved a lot of problems for me, because I don't like working indoors, you know, I'd much rather work outside. And then if I can work with them and we can do this work together, I mean, it doesn't get better than that, you know.
What a dream come true.
Yeah.
So let's lay this out. So inside, what would a constellation look like inside? So, just so we can paint a picture.
Okay, so inside it would be the same basically, except, you know, you could be doing it in a group, or you could be doing it one-on-one. You can use like figurines, you know, like I teach tabletop constellations where I use little horses. People use all different things. This is actually something else, a mythological creature, but you know, that's something that can be done indoors. You can use paper, you can use colored mats, you can use shoes. I mean,
how do they end up positioned? How do they find their way onto the field?
It's all about placement. Like, I know the way that we did it, I just let everybody sort of find their place, right? But
Yeah.
typically the person who's having it done would place the people or
Oh, I see.
place the
Okay. So the
horses,
person
right?
who sets the intention is the one who's gonna.
Yeah, place, yeah. Yeah. The way that I do it out there, I think we were doing it blind as well, like where you didn't know who you were,
Yes.
and yeah, and then just finding your way. I mean, it always works out kind of however you set it up, really get to where you need to be.
Yeah. So
Mhm.
so can you explain so first of all, there's the person who is going whoever constellation is going to be done, that person has an intention. So they're the power of intention is one of the most underestimated aspects of our existence here on this planet. So when you have an intention, a true intention, and you stay and it's clear, so that's going to help and affect everything that happens in this field. And so when you create this field, when you're doing a constellation, it's your intention has a direct effect on the outcome. I mean, I believe that you could apply that to just about everything. But um, I'm just going to read this part to you from that Sarah wrote about. While the constellation's taking place, the horses are turned into the field, and it's another way of saying that the unified field, but it's in a specific area, tuned into the field, and they're aware of the shifting energy. So when a truth is revealed, and you can feel this, I've experienced this, the energy field becomes congruent, and it the whole energy shifts, and it just becomes a safe place. And the horses just, I mean, like they intuit this, and they literally come around. They literally just show up. They come into the constellation and they place themselves however they place themselves. And it's this, they just have this impeccable timing. I mean, it's like as if they were eavesdropping on the conversation from across the corral. And then all of a sudden they're like, okay, that's our cue. Come on. And then, like, maybe not all of them, but sometimes all of them, and they'll just all come over, and they'll just, like, as if they knew exactly what you were talking about. They just come and stand, like, maybe right next to you, maybe a few feet away. Maybe they're looking at you. Maybe, their ass is to you, but it's absolutely incredible, because there is no, nothing calls them there. They come when they're ready. But I'm telling you, when you are out there and, you're talking about all these things, and all of a sudden these things show up, it's like, I mean, you just can't believe it. You have to kind of see it to believe it. But that's the interaction there. And so, Sarah, tell them a little bit about how the roles that are being kind of stepped into, and how that aspect of it works.
Yeah, that experience that you were just talking about, when someone, it's kind of unbelievable, but it's happening, is it's profound. And it also offers this interconnectedness that we have, right? That everything is connected, and not just the horses, the birds, the insects, the wind, the
Oh yeah.
clouds, whatever, the weather. I did one recently, and it rained when this person stood in a specific designated area that was part of her constellation. And everything happened when she stood in that area. Hummingbirds came in, it rained. I mean,
Wow.
it was profound. And then a horse was there too. So
Right.
everything happened, whereas like nothing happened anywhere else. Yeah. And that's when you realize that we're creating that in a sense of like our thoughts, our feelings,
Yeah.
when we're transparent in the sense of we're in rapport with what's going on the inside and what we're expressing on the outside, the
Yeah.
congruency.
And the interconnectedness. Let me try to describe this feeling, okay? Because I had an experience a few days ago, which very much is in line, parallel and similar to this experience, right? I lost a friend a few weeks ago, a close friend of mine, and she was a mentor and incredible angel of a woman, young woman, probably 2, 3 years older than me. But there was a few rough days, and and I just kind of began to really celebrate and in gratitude my time with her, having known her, and she gave me this heart once, this red heart, and I had just been out. I was picking up my son from school, and I was listening to a song that she asked me to sit down and close my eyes and listen to, and it was like the most amazing experience. I don't know how to describe it, but I fell in love with this song, and it happened to come on my playlist, and I was just kind of like having a dialogue with her in my mind, and I was now I could sense how happy she was and how free she was, and I said to her, I said, why don't you give me a sign and affirm all these things for me? So if you can, I was like, if it's not too much to ask, maybe you can. I said, I believe you're wonderful either way. And I got home, and I'm cleaning out my office, and underneath a pile of everything, literally, is this red heart with her name on it. I mean, this was 10 minutes after I asked for this sign, and I almost fell over on my ass. I felt so connected to her. I couldn't, you kind of can't believe it when it happens. And that's like the kind of feeling that, when a horse comes over to kind of assist you in connecting you to your ancestors, you feel that kind of holy shit, interconnectedness. It's a big heart opening feeling, and it's wonderful. So I just wanted to share that for people who are like wondering what this feels like.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah.
One of the horses, you remember Diva, the big black?
Of course, yeah.
Horse? Yeah. So not always, but like when she comes in, it's usually like the elephant in the room, or
she's that big.
Or the secret, or I don't know. Something that's in the family system that has not been revealed, but is like really influencing the family, like a secret.
Yeah.
Like that the father is not the real father.
Something like that, right?
That. Yeah.
Yeah. So people come and they set an intention, and so what we do then, like what we did was we step into the constellation to be of service to that person. So being a human being and participating, you kind of have to forget everything that you've heard, and just stay out of this mental gymnasium up here. You just kind of stay right here and be in your intuition, and then just go with the flow. And Sara kind of orchestrates, and the horses are just in the corral. They don't, I mean, like the horses, I mean, apparently they do know exactly what's going on, but we just start doing our thing, and then they would come over. So it's a way to intuit and discover and come to peace with things that you may not realize are distorting your energy field, or old patterns that are showing up in your life that you may be unaware of their origin. And so this is kind of like allowing the universe to conspire with all its elements to help you realize and integrate and heal whatever it is you may need to heal, whatever it is you may not realize you need to heal. I mean, I think that's the only way I can kind of put this into words. I don't know, Sara, how did I do?
Great. I think that's great. That's really I agree with everything you said.
Okay. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Man, I've been trying to figure out how to kind of summarize it because it's such a experiential thing. It's tough to describe. People probably, I think a lot of people would hear it and be like, "This is full of shit." That can't be. It's hard to believe, but then you experience it.
Yeah, it is hard to believe. And I always tell people, and then we do this in constellation work anyway, where we tell people like, maybe don't talk about it for the next 3 days,
Yeah.
because if you come out of that experience and then you tell someone who's like, what? Like, oh, right.
Yeah.
And they roll their eyes or something. And that just like rains on your like spiritual parade,
Yes.
and
And then you start
that's
doubting
not
what you
good.
experienced.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's a sort of, it's a sacred event, that
Yeah.
you've experienced, and you keep it sacred, and share it with people that can, that you trust and that you feel good, or not share it at all,
Right.
like,
Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
when we there was a ceremonial aspect at the end that we did, and we called in all our ancestors to be witness to it, and it was so, I mean, it was so powerful for me standing there. I could feel, I mean, I could feel all this energy, like this vortex happening around where we were standing, and in this land is pristine, and it's just that it's such a serene place. Like, I mean, you're gonna see bits and pieces of it because we are lucky enough to have a lot of footage, and so we can spice that into this so you get an idea of what we're talking about. But and that's the other opportunity, is like to reconnect with yourself, with the horses, and yeah, I mean, I can't recommend it enough. It was incredible. It was an incredible 3 days. So cool. I would do it again tomorrow.
All right.
I really would. Yeah. So what else have you got coming up, Sarah?
Well, we have an event, 1 day event. Actually, it's a cowboy campover for the Pasades meteor shower, and it's called Mehi Day. So it's for the horse Mehi.
Oh,
She's
Mehi.
the last.
I
Yeah,
danced with Mehi.
yeah, you dance with Mehi,
Yeah.
the spotted leopard Appaloosa. And it's sort of to celebrate her. I do a presentation around her, and then I have people come and like touch her and get familiar with her. And then we have a vegan potluck, and then it's a sound healing bath in the teepee structure
Oh,
that
cool.
has no covering, and then we watch the meteor shower,
Oh,
and then we
that
have
sounds like
breakfast in the morning. Yeah, so
fun.
that's like a 1 day thing. Oh, sorry, an overnight thing, and then I do have another shamanic retreat in October over Indigenous Day.
Oh, cool.
That day that used to be called something else.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That one, yeah.
Yeah, and then I have a 5-day horse constellation training as well in September, the end of September.
Very cool.
And then I also do online classes. I'm going to do a family constellation online class
Oh, that's
coming
awesome.
up.
So for people who are
Yeah.
interested in the constellation work, you can get a taste of it. I mean, online with Sarah, you'll see her link at the bottom of our video description. And I mean, I haven't done one online. I recommend doing it with the horses. That's my only experience. But I'm sure if you could get a taste for it and figure out if it's something that you want to learn more about and experience again. So yeah, so that's cool. That's coming up.
Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, I mean, the other thing that blew me away was just, your knowledge of the different breeds and like, so for example, the horse she was just telling about, the one I danced with, Sarah was teaching us how she's kind of the lowest on the totem pole, if you will. Because what kind of a horse was she, Sarah, and why is she considered the lowest?
Well, there's a hierarchy with horses, and you have the alpha horse, and then the omega would be the lowest. And there's variables in that too. But every horse basically has a place, like in the family, everyone has a place in the family. And when they accept their place, there's like harmony in the herd.
Mm-hmm.
And Mehi just happens to be at the bottom, and that means that she's the last to get the food, basically, you know, and they'll like push her off. But horses really do well in a herd. Like they would much rather be in a herd than be isolated. It's really like not good to have a horse isolated. It feels really unsafe for them and insecure, and it can really stress them out.
Yeah.
And
what breed is Mehi again? She's a
yeah,
spotted.
so she's a spotted leopard Appaloosa, and she came from the feedlot in Washington. And I found out through an organization here that sends volunteers to feedlots, basically to see if there's any horse there that anyone might want to adopt if they have a chance. Because the feedlot is basically the last place that they get taken to Canada or Mexico, where they get shot, killed, and then sold for meat. And they get transported in a really horrendous, unregulated way, because here, you know, there's no killing of horses or horse slaughter, but it doesn't stop horse slaughter. It just means, oh, we'll take them to Mexico or Canada where we can do that, and we'll take them in a cramped, you know, trailer that's not for horses, it's for sheep or something. I don't know, you know, like, and then they'll cram it in, and it's horrible. So it's a and the feedlot, before the feedlot is the auction, and that's usually when someone doesn't want their horse anymore, they end up at the auction, and then there's a meat buyer there. So like if no one buys that horse, he'll get it cheap and he'll sell it to the feedlot.
What do they do? Who's eating horse meat, or do they feed? They feeding?
Yeah, in Belgium, in France, in Southeast Asia. I mean, people eat horses. They have for years. Yeah, not in America, but
yeah,
they do, definitely in France. They have it for breakfast.
Wow.
Yeah. So yeah, there's a demand for horse meat, you know, and that's what happens to a lot of horses. It's a lot of horses. It's horrible. It's really horrible. So I really like this rescue. They're called the Laughing Pony Rescue. And so they, like I said, they have volunteers that go to auctions, that go to feedlots and take photos. And I saw a photo of May here, and I'm like, how did she end up there? You know?
Yeah,
like,
she's so pretty, and she's so
like
sweet.
Yeah, exotic horse, you know. And then at the time I was kind of maxed out, like with horses and everything, and I was like, well, I'll get one of my mentees. Like, they've got the money, they've got the room. But then I realized they didn't have the skill, because when you take a horse from a feedlot, you know nothing about that horse. You know, you don't know its history, you don't know, you know, anything, right? And it could be really traumatizing and dangerous for someone who
and Mehi wasn't she? She was very traumatized.
Yeah. So then I realized, like I have the skills, I have the room, but I don't really have the money to take on another horse and bring her from Washington. So I did a mini fund drive. You know, I just put out 2 shout outs, and I actually raised like $2,800 like in 2 days. And I was able to get her here, get the vet to see her. You have to get shots to go across state. And then by the time she got here, I mean, she was practically dead. Like, she was in a really bad way. And I had to isolate her. So you quarantine them for a bit. And but anyway, and she was terribly scarred up. And then what I figured out, like, you basically, the horse tells its story through their behavior and their body, and you can see the scars and the marks on them, and you can pretty much put together like what happened to her, you know. And what I think was that I think that she probably really hurt someone. Whether or not she killed someone, I don't know. But I think that she was used as a breeding horse, a breeding mare, and that she became unmanageable, you know. And so with time, you know, like the way that I work with horses, like Mayhe's a very sensual horse. I watch them, like, oh, I watch him scratch, you know, like, or scratch like this. And I'm like, hey, I can do that for you, you know, like, give me a little scratch in that place that's really itchy. And then like, that feels good,
Yeah.
and then the next thing they're following you around like, hey, you want to give me another scratch,
Yeah.
so then I become useful to her, and that creates a relationship where
Hmm.
she's coming to me and I'm not chasing her down, things
Yeah.
like
You're
that.
not hurting her.
Yeah, and I'm actually giving her something that's nice. And that was what I learned in polarity therapy is touch. Like it's incredible what you can do with touch.
Yeah.
And also like with the energetic frame of that, in the sense of how you approach. Not like I want to touch you.
Yeah.
It's being neutral, not
Yeah.
projecting your energy onto whatever the horse that you're approaching. Like Mayhew is extremely sensitive. I mean, I had a guy here yelling like the F word in the kitchen because he was frustrated, and I was with Mayhew, which was probably about 300 feet away, and she was shaking when
Wow.
she heard his voice. And so that she was
Wow.
around men that were screaming at her, whatever.
Yeah.
And like that's the level of sensitivity that
God,
they
that's such,
have.
what a,
Yeah.
when I was around May, she was so, I mean, she seemed so sweet and docile, like she didn't seem like she would harm a fly. So to think of
Yeah.
how you got her, and some of the abuse she endured, and I mean, it's just incredible how much they can change and rehabilitate and
Yeah.
kind of come into a joyous existence. And Mahi was, I mean, she was probably one of the most, if not the most interactive horse with us besides Corazon,
Yeah.
and tell me about Corazon. Has this gorgeous heart on her face. We're going to show you guys pictures of that. When this horse is just, I mean, she'll steal your heart. She's just, she's really aptly named Corazon. Tell me about Corazon, what her species is and where you got her.
Corazon's a Mustang.
She's a
So
Mustang,
that's a
right? Yeah.
wild horse. And she was rounded up, I think, around when she was 6 months. They have a tattoo on their neck. Did you see that?
Yes.
I don't know yeah. So that's in Arabic numerals, but it basically tells you the region and the year. I think they were they were rounded up by BLM, And there was a program where the BLM was paying, I think, I can't remember how much it was. It wasn't that much, but like a certain amount of money if you can teach the horse how to take a halter, to put a halter on them, because these animals have never been touched, right? They're wild. And this guy that I knew, this native guy, he got 4 horses from the BLM, and he was kind of doing it for the money. And I'm like, you're not going to make money doing that. You got to have fencing, you got to feed them, you got to get them there, you got to get them back, Well, in the end, I think he ended up just keeping them. And Corazon was difficult for him to work with, and he was scared of her. He was scared of her back legs because he saw the way she kicked out.
Yeah.
And he wanted me to trim her feet, but he hadn't even touched her legs. You have to teach the horse how to lift their legs. They don't just like lift their legs, right? And I saw how smart she was and everything, and I said, like, you should give me this horse. I think she would do really well with me. And he's like, nah, I'm not gonna, nah.
Yeah.
And with someone scared of horses, it's just an accident waiting to happen. It's a disaster, right?
Yeah.
Especially a wild horse. And anyway, 2 years forward from that moment, I got a call from him. He said, "You want Corazon?" And I just said, "Yeah." I didn't ask any questions. I said, "Yeah." And I think at the time I had 7 horses, so that would have been 8 horses. It wasn't like I was looking for another horse. And I just said, "Yeah." And it turned out that he had brought this guy in who was the trainer, and he basically traumatized her by like taking her to the ground and kicking her and like
trying to break her.
Yeah. And just effed her up, like,
oh man,
like, yeah. And so now I was getting a horse who
A
had
wild Mustang, massive trauma. Jesus.
Yeah. And so with Corazon, it took a couple of years, before she would let me touch the top of her head.
Wow.
Right. And this is another way that you can tell the history where they don't like being touched, like where they've, I think the guy put the bridle on and like probably pulled her ears or whatever, like, but she just didn't want to be touched. And which meant that she didn't want the fly mask on, like, so it just like takes time. And now she's like a puppy dog, like I taught her how to fetch a ball and bring it to me, and she's really smart, and she's all of that is behind her now. And I've had her since 2015.
Nice. Yeah.
But
she's awesome.
She's great. She's really great. And she likes people.
She does.
She really does like people.
She does. I mean, and she's amazing. And I mean, I think she was involved in every constellation we did. And man, I could talk about all your horses all day. So like Diva she's the big one that we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
What a gorgeous, stunning animal this horse is. How old is Diva?
I think she's about 16 or 17. I've had her since she was 6 months.
Oh,
she
wow.
came from a rescue that was getting PMU horses from Canada, Alberta. Do you know what the PMU is? I told you that, right?
The
Premarin.
Yeah.
So
they use the urine, right?
They take urine from the pregnant mare, and then they make Premarin out of it, and which is pregnant mare's urine. That's what Premarin means. And then they had that study, I think it was in about 2003, around there, where they actually realized that it was causing breast cancer in women and heart disease. And so at that time, Premarin was the third largest selling drug on the market.
Wow.
It's a ching drug. Like, they give it to women and you take it for the rest of your life, or if you have a hysterectomy, they give it to you. And then also men with prostate cancer, they give it to them because it's estrogen. Right?
Yeah.
Anyway, what that did was that it, I think there was about 30,000 pregnant mares on the rescue circuit, because they closed a lot of the ranches down that were producing Premarin because there was not the same demand for it. And that's when I found out about the PMUs. And they're also horses that have never been trained. They've had very little interaction with people. And Diva was one of the byproducts, which is a foal, right? Because they're pregnant every year. And usually the foals go to the feedlot. And then this rescue, they took like 50 of the yearlings, like the foals, and they brought them down, and I picked Diva out of that bunch.
What a good pick. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Pretty Boy's your only gelding, right?
Yeah, gelding, correct. Yeah.
Pretty Boy was he was cool. He was scratching his butt for us one time. It's the funniest thing you ever saw. He found this bush, he backed right up into it. He was like, "Oh yeah, this is great." But so you only have one gelding, right? And how does he interact with the rest of the herd?
He's in his element. I mean, he's with the mares. He's having the time of his life. He loves it.
So even though he's a gelding, he's still having his fun, right? I mean, is that?
Oh yeah. I mean, not all the time. He's kind of older now. He's got to be like in his early 30s. But yeah, they can still like have recreational sex,
Yeah, good for Pretty Boy. My God, he lives a charmed existence.
Yeah, there's a huge prejudice against mares, and they'll say like, "Oh, moody mares," or or that bitchy mare, like how they describe women.
Yeah.
And I've had a completely different experience of mares. The mares are very nurturing and protective, and like once you relate with a mare, and you they trust you, like it's incredible. Like I don't know. I love mares, and I never said I want geldings or I want mares. It was just kind of who showed up for me.
Yeah, just like constellation. Um,
Yeah.
so cool. It's an incredible. Everything that you've created for yourself, I think, is so amazing. So it's so awesome to share it with everyone. Um, so let me take you far out now. Without, let's see. So I know we talked a little bit about this, but have you ever? I mean, you live on this beautiful property. I just imagine that you have such a greater chance of seeing like a UFO than I do here in New York City, obviously, because UFOs know better than to come around the city. But tell me about your experience with UFOs and ETs, and what are your beliefs about it?
Yeah. I had a friend living here for a while called Alcyon. That's his name. And he was really into the stars and he knew the planets, and he's an astrologer. I also know astrology
Is
too.
that his real name?
His real name is Jonathan,
Oh,
JD.
okay, I was going to say.
But
Okay.
his adopted name is that he adopted himself is Alcyon.
I had a feeling. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what he likes to be called. And we would just like lay on our backs on the bench and just look up like till like midnight or something, and what a feeling of that expansion, like seeing all the stars, seeing all the lights up there, letting that kind of come into your life and feeling that expansion in your body and your experiences. I mean, I highly recommend it.
Yeah.
I don't do it enough. Like I tend to just like at the end of the day, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna lay down.
Yeah.
But we would see strange things and he would point them out. And he had an app on his phone that could tell what was a satellite and what wasn't, and
Oh,
things like
cool.
that. And then he was very sensitive that, and he go like, "Did you feel that?" And I'm like, "No, what?" And he's like, "Something went over there." Like, and I just sort of don't really see things like that, Like I'd
Yeah.
like to, and I we did do that fifth contact thing, that fifth
No, the
contact.
CE5. Yeah.
Yeah, I have the app, and then
Oh,
I had
cool.
an intern, and we tried to make contact here in the TV, and
Yeah.
like, but nothing really big happened, like,
Yeah.
so in answer to your question, personally, I haven't really had any sort of mind-blowing experiences
Yeah.
or like seen them, but I'm aware of it, and I'm totally like, I'm open to that. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. I think there's way more than just one species too. I mean,
Oh,
there's
yeah.
a hell of a lot, and I've done a lot of reading about it over the years. So it's something I'm really interested in.
Yeah. That's so cool.
Yeah.
That's probably one of the reasons why we get along so well. That's the same with me.
Yeah.
I've had a few experiences, but a lot of them have been, like through different connections, and like I think maybe I saw a UFO, or at least I thought I saw a UFO once, but I've done a lot of meditations and using the CE5 and connecting and practicing remote viewing where I've connected and seen ships and had interactions, and also like plant ceremonies where you can kind of like just take the veil right off and begin to have a more direct interaction. So I'm, similar to you. I've had, I'm open to everything, and I have a fondness for it. So that's so cool. So if you were leaving, let's say, what would you whisper into the ears of every human being if you could plant a suggestion, let's say, that they could understand that they would understand when they woke up? What would you say to everyone that you think they need to hear?
You mean a message?
Yeah, it could be a message. Sure.
I would say like trust yourself.
Yeah,
Like,
it's an important message. Trust yourself. It's probably the greatest
yeah,
thing I ever learned to do.
yeah, me too.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
again, I saw people learning to do that when I was at your retreat. So that was incredible. And it was an honor to witness you work in that fashion. So Sara, this has been awesome. And I'm so thrilled to have had you on, and we're going to have so much stuff to spice this video up with different pictures and footage from the retreat we did. And I'm so glad that we got to do this, and it's going to be perfect timing because the vlog should be coming out probably, I think, another week or two. And so this will probably come out right before the vlog, and then, you know, we'll coordinate everything. But thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I really appreciate you having me on and filming and everything. And thank you, Faust. I really,
You're
yeah,
very welcome.
I'm really thankful to you.
You're very welcome. It's my pleasure. It's great to see you. And I'll tell Hunter and Christina you said hello, and I'm sure they're going to be watching this, and we will talk soon.
Yeah. Hello, Christina. Hello, Hunter. And Kasson.
Yeah, and Kasson, of
Yeah,
course. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Thank
All
you so
right.
much, and we'll be in touch. You take
Okay,
care.
pal. Okay.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank
Bye-bye.
you.